Is justice really blind? Or do we live in a two-tiered justice system that judges its citizens based on their gender rather than the crime they have committed? What is the penalty for a teacher who has sex with a student? In America, most schools have eliminated their sexual education courses as being too obtrusive into the lives of students. These classes were meant to prepare students for the eventuality of having sex. But there was no eventuality for them having sex with their own teachers. Tonight, on Predator 101, we discuss a justice system based upon gender. Episode 3, Walsh versus Collins. We hire teachers to mold our children's minds and to keep the relationship with them above the belt and purely platonic. Most teachers can't find the time between creating a winning lesson plan and grading homework, but some find the time to have sex with their students. Case in point, special education teacher Mrs. Jennifer Walsh, age 27 years. For having sex with a minor, Judge Jody Luber sentenced the teacher to 1 year probation, no prison. Our male teacher, Mr. Jeremy Collins, was sentenced for exchanging sexual photos of himself with a minor student. Yes, I'm guilty. I ain't sorry for what I Teacher Jeremy Collins was sentenced to 6 months in jail, although he never had sex with the minor student. In the great state of Cincinnati, Ohio, a former Cincinnati, Ohio special education teacher who had a 3-month sexual relationship with a student received a 1-year probation sentence in court. Now, former Sycamore High School special education teacher Jennifer Walsh, who was 27 years at the time, faced up to 18 months in prison for doing so. But ultimately, the judge would award her no jail time. Walsh had sex with a 17-year-old female student from the month of May to the month of August of 2018. This is according to the indictment. The detective in the case told the teacher he was to investigate that to him she was not a sexual predator. The judge that presided over her case agreed with the detective and told the ex-teacher as much by saying that I don't think that you are either. But if she were not a predator, then why would she have to surrender her teacher's license under the predator clause? Now, the true facts of this case are that in October, a grand jury indicted Walsh on 2 counts of sexual battery after Montgomery police investigated a sexual battery complaint against her in the month of October. The teacher was able to plead her case down to gross sexual imposition and count of sexual battery, but agreed to a new deal to lower down even further. After testimony by the underage female victim that she had sex with, who is now 18, prosecutors agreed to dismiss the sexual battery charge and amend the gross sexual imposition charge to interference with custody. That's it. Interference with custody. Now, in this particular state, the interference with custody charge in Ohio is stated as a crime. The issue comes up when somebody will not return your child to you. Now, this sometimes occurs with relatives or friends of the family who try to assert their wishes to spend more time with the child by simply refusing to return the child to his or her parents. That's it. Simple. Prosecutors say Walsh and the student, who was not a special education student at the time, crossed state lines together during their months-long relationship. The victim, who spoke in the court, and she also wrote a letter to the judge, and the judge says, I've read and seen her words in court, saying she has not been harmed. She engaged in this conduct willingly. Now, she is now 18 years old, and in fact, not actually your student, but what a student at the school at the time. This is what Judge Luber said. She had very nice things to say about you, and I think she loves you and wants to have a relationship with you. The judge said that she thought was also charged by detective of the case. The judge also goes on to say that she thought it was very interesting that the detective stated on record that this unusual case he thought was real love. So now when a woman molests a child, that's real love. The judge continues on to say, I've never heard an officer say that before either. She said Judge Lubers agreed to a new deal and sentenced Walsh to 1 year probation, which made her free on her own recognizance immediately and gave her a fine of $100 only, with the possibility of a year in prison if she violates her parole. But the judge didn't cease there. She had more kind-hearted words to say about this person, the person that stood before her to be judged. She continued on by saying, I was a prosecutor for a long time, and I had several cases where a teacher was involved with a student, Judge Luber said. She continues on, I've had several cases as a judge where a teacher was involved with a student, but this is really quite a unique case. The detective, when speaking about the facts of this case to me, was quite compelling. I've never had a case like this. I've never had an officer come in and speak as candidly as he did about this case, the judge says. Now, this is where it gets weird. Of course, every case deserves individual attention, and every case is different and very fact-specific. And this truly is a unique case, the judge said. So, in reviewing the sentence for this case, I wanted to review what the officer said about you coming forward, with him speaking to you. He says, the judge continued on by saying, you spoke honestly. You gave him a 3-hour interview. He told me and told him everything about that happened. You didn't have to do that, she said. This is end quote. Now, in October, a Hamilton County Job and Family Services investigator reported an incident involving the teacher and the student. Police said they seized Walsh's computer, cell phone, and personal documents. Walsh was arrested and posted a $100 bond before she was released from jail. Now, 5 witnesses came forward about the sexual battery, one of them a fellow teen, according to the police report. Now, Walsh had no previous criminal record up to then, and because of this, Judge Lubers said the prosecution recommended a very lenient probation sentence. Can you imagine this? You get a very lenient probation sentence in a case where males do not. Judge Lubers said she would review the case after 6 months and said Walsh would remain out of prison as long as she checked in with her parole officer and did not commit another felony. Now, in a minute, we go into the Mills case. And I want you to notice that there is none of this genuine concern when it comes to the male who 1 year later was to stand in front of the same particular judge. So, let's compare and contrast the female teacher to what the male teacher did 1 year later while being sentenced by the exact same judge. Let us see if she rules equally under law. Let's see if justice is truly blind. Now, the male teacher in this case, a former Walnut Hills teacher, was sentenced for exchanging naked pictures of himself with a student. Now remember, he did not have sex with the female student as the previous female teacher did. So from the exact same town, 1 year later in Cincinnati, Ohio, a former Walnut Hills teacher was sentenced to spend 6 months in jail for exchanging naked pictures with that student. Mr. Jeremy Collins pleaded guilty to child porn charges. For this act, Collins lost his license to teach at the school or anywhere in that town or anywhere in the country. Since his arrest, his attorney said he's completed alcohol treatment and sought mental health treatment. With Collins' day in court, he chose to speak and he said, and I quote, I want to express my sincere regret and apologies to the victim. I'm very sorry for violating my position of trust as a teacher. It was very wrong of me and I'm very sorry. He says, I believe I'm a better person now after having gone through this and rehab and my treatment with Dr. Bassman. Now, the assistant prosecutor said, this an embarrassing thing has been done. He has betrayed the trust of the students, the school, and the parents of the students at the school, and he should be ashamed of himself. Judge Judy Lubers, the very same judge that sentenced and praised the female teacher 1 year before, had this to say about the male teacher. You ready? She said that she was disturbed by some of the information in the case. She said, according to the information sent by his attorney, Collins claims to have no intention of making the relationship physical. So the male teacher, had no claims of making that relationship any further than when those pictures he sent. No sexual relationship. Now, Judge Luber said the victim's letter indicated they made plans several times to have sex, but canceled out of fear of getting caught. She told Collins he never should have did it and he knew better. She says, my, why you should never done that. Now, she got pretty self-righteous. Now, I don't believe that it is right whether a male or female teacher does this, but the sanctimoniousness of the judge who let one go for a greater crime should not escape notice. The judge continued on by saying that the victim contacted the male teacher as a sophomore and professed her feelings for this teacher, but he rejected her at the time. When she contacted him as a junior, Teacher Collins did not reject her. The judge said that's inappropriate to have a relationship with your student, and you know that because you're the kid's teacher. You're an adult, she told him. I mean, you could be her father. She was 16. You could be her father, and that's completely inappropriate, the judge said. The judge goes on to say, I would think you, as a teacher, would know that. Now, Judge Luber said the victim thought they would date when she turned 18. So this was what the young girl thought. Then she found out that Collins had a girlfriend. The judge told him that the girl's schoolwork and job suffered after that revelation. The judge says she is a child. She doesn't know any better. She's not mature enough to understand the situation and deal with it because she is a 16-year-old child, and you knew that, said the judge. Now, I think she's obsessed with you, the judge said. Now, if this 16-year-old child did not know better, then how much more would a child 1 year later? In the other case with a 17-year-old. This is pretty weird. So, anyway, now this would be in line with her ruling in the case just 1 year before if she would change her mind. But in this case, Judge Lubers gave the male teacher jail time because she said that she had to protect the community. Now, why did she feel that she didn't have to protect the community from the female teacher who not only had sex with the female student a year before, but took her outside of the state line against her parents' wishes? Actually, in the female teacher's case, we are talking about rape and kidnapping. If we were speaking from the truth and not just saying words like the modern day words, she touched her, or a sexual happenstance. Now, the judge in the case against the male teacher further sentenced him to a probation for 3 years after he gets out of jail, and he must register as a Tier 1 sex offender. Too bad she didn't sentence these career-killing moves on the female teacher who actually slept with the student. So, for Predator 101, I ask you guys to think about this case. On one hand, you had a female teacher who knew better, who had sex with her student, took that student outside of state lines against parents' wishes. They didn't know where this child was. When she did get arrested, she was released on $100. When she did make it to court, only fine she had to pay was $100, and she was put on probation for 1 year. No jail time, not 1 hour, not one single day. In the same situation where you would have a male teacher who did not have sex with the student, took pictures of himself, which were wrong, I admit, sent those pictures to the student, and that student thought that the teacher was in love with them. As a matter of fact, they tried to encourage a relationship, but the teacher rebuffed that. Even though they planned on having sex, they never did. The teacher did not go through with that. For that reason, that teacher has to spend 6 months in jail. You tell me, does that make any sense? One with the pictures and one with the actual act. For Predator 101, this is Charles Rivers. Join us next time when we give you another one of these insane cases. We'll see you next time.
Everybody's gone and you're old. Yeah, you'll be singing that song till everybody's gone and you're old. Singing on. I could have been someone singing